Kyla,
Casey,
and Carol.
Welcome back to the 101 podcast. Today we have the same people as always. Are we ready?
No guests this time. Surprise. I know it was nice to get a break from us talking, but it's back. Just the three of us.
Just an extra voice in the corner.
Just the three of us.
That's not... I didn't ask for that.
Well,
That's
you
the
got
way
it
it needs
anyway,
to go.
baby.
All right.
Well,
I'm going to look very favorably upon a motion to open debate.
motion to open debate.
That is in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Debate is now open.
Heck yeah.
You know what? I promised Kyla something shortly before recording.
It was a mistake.
I said, hey, when we do our little, ramble bit, we can talk about astrology. Would you like to take it away?
Yes, please. I love astrology so very much, and I understand the skepticism, but really, it's fun, so who cares? Just, if you're an astrology hater, I don't want to hear it. Don't tell me, because I'm going to get upset.
If you're an astrology hater, DM us, and then Kyla will block you from the podcast.
You will be blocked immediately. So, if you don't like the podcast anyway, this is a great,
Great way to slip out.
I guess. So to talk about my own natal chart a bit. I am a Taurus sun, a rising Gemini, and a moon Sagittarius. I'm very deeply a Taurus in every single part of me. It's ingrained in who I am.
Every time Kyla makes any decisions and or purchases anything, she's like, oh my god, such a Taurus.
I am though. Okay, and our other friend Efrain, which we have mentioned several times, even though he's never been on here, maybe someday you'll meet him. He's also a Taurus, and we share this special connection. He'll DM me things. He was like, haha, just Taurus things. I'm like, I know, know.
Efrain, if you're listening right now, send us a DM so we can see if you're listening to the podcast.
That's good. Keep that in there.
If not, you're getting kicked out of the Facebook group.
Other young ladies in the room, would you like to list your natal charts?
Yeah, so I'm a sun Pisces, a rising Cancer, and a moon Cancer, which basically means, from what Kyla has told me and what I've looked up, that I just have so many emotions.
Shortly before we started, this is what the conversation led us to.
Yes.
It's Caroline's natal chart.
Carol does have a lot of emotions, and that's not bad. She just has a lot of them.
I'm a grown woman, and if you yell at me, I will cry immediately.
I love
And that is my new favorite meme that I have sent to probably 4 or 5 people.
Maybe that'll be our Wednesday meme.
Yeah,
Because you made
maybe,
made a
I'm a
little
grown-ass
change to it.
delegate, but if you yell at me, I will cry immediately.
That's relatable.
Oh, so good. Casey, what is your natal
Alright,
chart?
so I have to preface this by saying I'm highly a zodiac skeptic. I do follow several zodiac accounts just for the fun of it, but I feel like I don't really relate to my sign or even my other signs that much.
I
Kyla's-
disagree with you, but go ahead. I'll give my reasoning in a moment.
I'd love to hear it. So my sun is Libra, which I would say I relate to the least.
You are nothing like a Libra. You're the least Libra I've ever met in my life.
And then the rising and moon are double Sagittarius.
I think you are very Sagittarius, personally.
I would say if I had to pick one, that would be the one I relate to the most. But sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I kind of force myself to fit into the box that I feel like I have
a whole
to.
part of it.
Yeah,
The whole
it's changing your
thing of it is,
mentality.
yeah, because you could say the whole thing of anybody could read this with a caption that says this is your sign, and you could find something to relate to it. And sure, a lot of it's stereotypical, and a lot of it is idealistic and being oh, I like this sign because it's whatever, and this is what I want to be like. But it's also have some fun in it. The whole point is supposed to be looking at yourself introspectively and being what parts of me does this exhibit, and call to attention for self-betterment or whatever. If you want to use it for the purpose of astrology, other than being this meme relates to me because I am X sign. But I think that Casey exhibits her rising and moon signs more because that's how her personality is. I'm not going to get into the whole what each planet
dissect
means.
myself right now.
If you want me to do a bonus episode at some point about astrology,
Add me
I
on
will.
CoStar.
Add me on CoStar. Don't add me on CoStar.
So, someone mentioned something. Efrain, if you're not listening to this, we'll kick you out of the Facebook group. That goes along with the announcement that we did make a Facebook group. Caroline made the Facebook group.
Yes, we have made a Facebook group. It is now my pet project. is my little thing that I've found to do for the podcast. So there's a whole Facebook group. It is on the Mono One Facebook page. Make sure when you're looking up Mono One, you look up MUN, no space, 01. So it's just all together, just 5 characters all together. Easy. And then within that, there's a little blue button, if you're on desktop, that says Visit Group. If you hit Visit Group, you can request to join the Mono One community, and the MUN in community is capitalized because I thought it was cool.
Also, the link is in our bio on
Also,
Instagram.
the link is in our bio because we don't have enough followers to do a swipe up thing on our story.
So just get us to 10K, guys. We're only 9,500 away.
Okay,
Yes.
but I do want to say, we didn't make another post about it because we literally just made the last post, but we hit 500 followers on the Instagram yesterday or today? Today.
This morning.
This
we woke
morning.
up to it.
Which is super, super awesome. Like,
wild.
thank you guys for following. It really does mean a lot to us. We put a lot of time into this, so getting any sort of support for the stuff that we're doing really does mean a lot to us, because we do try really hard. Also, thanks for the support on Meme Wednesdays. We make those memes ourselves, so we really appreciate our homegrown memes being seen by others.
Just for context, we posted our, thanks for 400 followers 3 days ago.
So,
Wow.
we won't post another one for a bit, but maybe get us to 1K and we'll do something spicy.
Cheers to that.
Cheers, mates.
Where's your little...
Also, I know I've been talking for a minute, but I want to bring up a lie that I said in the last episode where I said that I would be making polls about whether or not you guys wanted to see stuff from us.
So much. They were like, where are the polls?
I didn't do that, and also probably none of you remembered. But I will probably make those next week. Probably. Because we have been bouncing around the idea of Patreon as a form of getting, more diverse content to you guys, doing some bonus episodes through there, just kind of diversifying. Also, we put a lot of money into this. So
and a lot of work.
A lot of money and a
many
lot of
hours.
work, and we all also work jobs, so, this is kind of a big gig for us to be taking on pretty much all of our free time, putting it into the podcast. So we're trying to find ways to, monetize
Subsidize,
so we can at least break even on the stuff that we're doing, because, we have to pay for a hosting platform for the podcast, equipment, hosting sites for the website, premium things for storage, all sorts of stuff. It kind of costs a lot of money. So if you have any suggestions, let us know.
Drop us a line.
Drop us a line. Venmo me.
But to get into today's episode, we'll be talking finally about the JCC. The art of the JCC. What JCC means, what they're to me, to everybody else in Model UN, kind of what are the mechanics of a JCC, and then we'll tell some stories and then give some tips. So it'll be kind of a mixture of anecdotes and actual hard advice for committee. So, what is a JCC? What does it stand for?
So it stands for Joint Crisis Committee, and basically it is 2 rooms that function on, the same event or the same situation or whatever theme you're going for. So a really common one that we can probably just use as an example today is a Cold War, where it's US is in one room and Russia's in the other room, or I guess the USSR, not really Russia yet. You go back and forth and you debate, and one side tries to win, but you have different objectives.
The best way that I can describe it is, if you are thinking about this, for those of you out there that like superhero movies, the Marvel comic universe. It's 2 separate movies that are happening within the same sort of time frame. It's all of the situations are the same, but it's 2 separate scenarios. The characters are different, and honestly, the individual circumstances of the room are different. And often they have different objectives, but usually both rooms will influence one another. And that's when, an Avengers would happen, because there are crossovers, people change sides, and things move together. I hate superhero movies, if you were wondering, and I'm making this reference for you out there who like them. You're welcome.
I like to define Model UN structures in a very literal sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Caroline and Kyla gave examples of styles of committee that could happen. So basically, it's 2 separate committee rooms. You have your normal committee in one and a normal committee in the other, and it's always crisis style. And those rooms, like Kyla and Caroline said, are a part of the same universe, and they're a part of the typically same event or same timeline. So, like Caroline said, USA is one room, USSR is another. Like Kyla said, you know, one superhero is in one room and the other superhero is in the other, and then the crossover is like basically an Avengers movie. Each committee is fighting for their ideas and their way of life and their kind of motives, and you're pushing back and forth between who is being more successful. So if the US passes a directive that sends spies to Russia, but Russia catches them, that's an example of something that one room would do to influence the other. Mm-hmm. So the actions in crisis and in room through directives of one committee affect the other because they're essentially linked in the same time and same universe.
There's also a cool linkage between it because in a standard crisis committee, you can only send notes to people in the same room or to crisis. However, in a JCC, you can send notes to delegates in the other room. So basically, if you are trying to figure out information from the other room or, you know, even make a alliance with the other room in any sort of capacity, you can send a note directly to someone else, which is a really interesting aspect of it. And it causes a lot of drama and many times, but it's cool. It's a really interesting way to run a committee, and it adds a lot of dynamic aspects to a crisis committee, which is already dynamic to begin with.
Yeah, Caroline and Kyla gave great examples of a JCC that you might see at conference, but I just jotted down some other ideas. Common topics are civil wars, wars between two nations, so one country is one room, one country is another one, or one side of the civil war is one room, one side is the other. One I see sometimes, but I think it'd be cool if I saw more, is like an RNC versus DNC during a certain election, so you're kind of competing to see what room is going to win the presidential election. And then people get really creative with it, and it could not even be two forces that seem super competitive at the time. It could just be an example that we can later give is there was one where it was the entirety almost of Europe and North Africa and the Middle East kingdoms, and there were a lot more rooms than two, but they were all in the same realm. There's pros and cons to doing that. Personally, I think the ones where people have a very direct conflict already are the ones that are more successful, but that's also a possibility, is you're all in the same time zone, but you don't have a direct conflict immediately.
I guess one of the things that I like to see from a good JCC is a lot of cross-room conflict and debate and things that deal with being a JCC, because if I wanted to be in a JCC, like, I want to have some, you know, commentary and, like, debate with the other room and kind of see what's going on in there. So I guess it's more interesting when Crisis will come in and say, hey, you know, this happened, the other room passed a directive, you have 15 minutes to, like, write a
directive that kind of
write like a directive that reacts to it or, like, addresses it in some way, or else, you know, X will happen.
Yeah,
time crises.
Time crises are super cool. And, you know, just updates in general that give you an idea of what's going on in the other room.
Yeah.
Because sometimes things get disjointed, especially if there are two different crisis teams working on each thing. You know, it's hard for that crossover to happen. But I've been in some really fantastic JCCs, and my favorite, a TCC, which is a triple crisis committee, which is kind of what Casey was talking about, where there are 3 rooms interacting. We've seen anything up to 5 or 6 rooms interacting. That's a little excessive in my opinion.
It was. We could talk about that.
We'll talk about it in a bit. But, you know, things that cause interactions, like for the one that I was in, they pulled us out and we did a presidential debate, all 3 groups together, which is really cool to see because everybody, you get to see who you're working with, which you don't usually get to do, and that's interesting.
Yeah, so I think now that we've explained what a JCC is and said what makes a good JCC, we should go around and talk about the JCCs we've been in, and then after that, we can give some tips on how to, you know, operate successfully within a JCC. So personally, I've been in 3 JCCs at conference.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
You've been in.
I keep falling into them somehow. I tell myself that I'm not doing another JCC, and then I end up in it because it sounds cool.
You like historical committees,
You do, yeah.
and honestly, most JCCs are historical.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, there's something about the added factor of the other room that's really fun, but it does get really annoying. So I'll talk about that in a second, but the first JCC I was ever in was actually my first conference. If you go back to listen to episode 2 where we talk about our first conferences, I go a little more in depth there with what I did. But that one was like a 5 to 6 committee room. Caroline was in one of the other committees, actually. But it was, like I said before, it was a bunch of kingdoms in like the 1100s, and there was no obvious conflict. And I think the issue with that was we weren't really kept in the loop with what other rooms were doing because we were juggling so many of our own internal problems that Crisis was throwing at us, and of course ones that delegates were creating for ourselves, that we never really interacted with the JCC style of it. The second one I did was at my second conference. That one was a Pirates versus Royal Navy JCC.
That was a really cool one.
In the 1700s. It was a very cool topic. I was governor of the Bahamas in the Royal Navy, and that was a lot of fun. I felt like there also wasn't a ton of face-to-face interaction. Like, sometimes you can go out and meet with delegates from the other room, but that didn't really happen. It was more through, like, directives and trying to, chase each other's boats down. And then I think the best run JCC I've ever been in was the one I was in this fall at Kayak. And the Royal Navy one was also at Kayak, but I think the one this year was really great. It was the Peloponnesian War, so one room was the Spartans and one room was the Athenians, and I was Pericles in Athens. And they did it really successfully with balancing out-of-room meetings to, like, talk to people from the other side, to sending notes to people on the other side. Some people flipped rooms. We had a lot of, like, battle plans, and then at the end, some of the delegates in our room had actually called in the Persians to try to wipe us out as, like, a little backstabby thing. And they actually combined the Athenians and the Spartans to fight against the Persians together in, like, one massive room filled with all the delegates. And we had to basically come up with this massive directive to fight them, and that was, like, the last moment at Saturday.
Cool.
Yeah. It was very cool. I think they did it really well.
Yeah, so the only technical JCC type thing I've been in was spring freshman year when I was in that weird, like, 5 or 6 committee thing that Casey was talking about. I can tell you from our side...
What committee were you in again?
It was the Fatimid Caliphate.
Yeah, and I was in Kingdom of France.
Yeah, it was the same time period, and if I'm gonna be honest with you...
Strange combo, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, that just... Frankly, in my mind, doesn't make sense.
How are we going to relate?
I was running through... We were sitting around talking about what we were going to do for this episode. And we were talking about JCCs, and I'm like, wow, I don't think I've ever been in one. And then we were running through, and Casey was like, no, you were in that one freshman year. And I was like, was that a JCC? And honestly, it had no JCC aspects. Like, we didn't communicate with other rooms, and I completely forgot that, like, it was even anything more than just a committee.
Do you remember the war games they did, though, at the end?
Vaguely.
The holy mess that was. Basically,
I do remember that.
It was, like, the last half of Saturday. So, a time where a lot of people are trying to get their culmination arcs in. Mm-hmm. They were like, forget the notes. We're doing war games. So they had up this big map, and they continued this into Sunday, too. And we're all like, we're done with this. But they had this big map up, and, we all had a color in our countries, and we had to pass directives that would move our troops, but we don't know how many troops anybody else has because we haven't interacted with them at all. We don't know where they are. So we're just, like, kind of blindly shooting into the map here. And it was, of course, everyone's screaming at each other like crazy.
That's awful.
But
it was bad.
It was a mess. And they just, like, abandoned it. They were like, this is not good.
Because JCC war games can be really cool if done properly. Mm-hmm. With our high school conference, we've had some directors that have run JCC war games incredibly. We've also done some trainings for our competitive team where we do it ourselves, and they're really fantastic. And we've also all been in committees where they go really well. But, I think if you overstep your bounds and, expand to 5 rooms, you're going to have some problems. It's just inevitably going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. Did you like that committee? I don't even know what you were.
Oh, I was commander of the missionaries.
Oh.
I think.
Weren't you a priest?
Yeah, I was, like, the most important priest in France. But, of course, I was also kind of stupid, and it was my first conference, and I was like, what's Crisis? And it was very confusingly run the way that conference did it, too. So
that was probably my least favorite committee I've been in.
I
didn't like it at all.
I really liked my chairs.
My least favorite experience ever.
Go back to episode 2 and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, well. I hated
Old teaser.
if anybody's on that staff or on that team, sorry.
It's not you, it's them.
It was a while ago.
I've heard it's gotten better.
Yeah.
I've heard it's gotten better. I mean, I also graduated, so I can't go back. I would never choose to also. But, anyway.
Enough of that.
So.
Thanks for following us.
Thanks for following us.
And listening.
Love you. But the only JCC, like, thing that I've been in officially outside of, you know, running them or doing trainings with them was also my first committee ever, which I also talked about in episode 2. And that was the TCC between the Medellin cartel, the Cali cartel, and the DEA. It, like, fluctuates between being my number 1 favorite committee ever, my number 2. I loved that committee. It was run beautifully. The staff was incredible. It was at Kayak. Shouts to if anybody was on that staff, because we had a holdup, which a lot of JCCs and TCCs do have, where notes get slow. You know, a staff is trying to handle 3 different rooms worth of notes. And even if they have a lot of staffers, it's still a lot to do because you're trying to communicate with the other crisis rooms and make cohesive actions and crisis updates and stuff. It's a lot. But we complained about crisis notes being slow, as everybody does during feedback, and immediately they fixed it. Somehow they, like, made a system, made it work.
Let's
Those
run
notes
people.
It was insane. Truly, I was so impressed with how that room was run. It was super, super interesting. I went in as Martha Alicia Echeverri, who was the mistress of a cartel person. I ran for president, won, got murdered, came back as someone else, I can't remember his name. Beto?
O'Rourke?
Sounds right.
Not Beto O'Rourke.
I mean, Spanish.
Similar.
He just popped into, like,
to
what was
speak
it, the
Spanish.
Cali cartel?
Yeah.
He's like, what's up? Hola.
Hola. But, yeah, so it was really cool. Everyone in that committee was awesome. It was run super well, and I really liked it. But that's, like, an interesting example of things where there's an existing conflict, but it's not necessarily a war, which I really like that because it kept us out of war games. Because, you know, it's not like the Cali cartel is going to go to war with the DEA. That's not exactly how it works, despite the name War on Drugs. Not quite that.
Let's line up our troops, boys.
This is a war of words, my friends.
Well, honestly, wait. I think we went to war with the FARC, actually.
I don't
Now
know.
that I'm thinking about it, I think we did. But it was like, you know, fake war. Like,
You wrote a directive.
well, it was like, yeah, we didn't do war games, but it was also like, they're staging attacks on you. Are you going to reclaim Colombia? And we're like, maybe, and then tried.
Actually, like, keep it, whatever.
So honestly, don't really want
Honestly, you can have it.
We didn't want it anyway, so,
Cali and the Medellin definitely want Colombia. The DEA arguably also does.
Sloppy
But honestly,
seconds.
you could say that about the U.S. and any part of Latin America during any part of history, but that's not my business. It is. But, but yeah, you know, I think we can transition now into a bit of advice and also advice on being a delegate and also advice on, I think, training to be in TCCs and JCCs, which is, I think, a really integral part of what we do and what makes us successful, because it is not easy to get the manpower to run a training for a JCC, but they're super, super important. And Casey was our training coordinator, so she can shine a lot more light on that. But, you know, if you can set up a simulation so you can show your delegates what it's like, that's integral, because otherwise you're throwing them into a situation that is, frankly, 100% different between other stuff.
my biggest tip for if you want to run a JCC training, bodies, people. So basically,
Honestly.
like, make sure your club's at a size where you can support 2 rooms. And I've been in small committees, so I'd even go, hey, if you can put 8 and 8 in each room, you're good.
Oh, that's
like, that's
plenty.
fine. And then
You can
have a
run off of
crisis
8.
room of, like, 5 with a really strong director or 2. That's good. You probably totally need 20 to 25 people to run, like, a strong JCC training.
Which most teams can swing. Not all, but, you know, most.
Yeah, I like how Kyla really said that it is important to train for a JCC, but also to keep in mind that not all of your delegates are going to be in a JCC, so you don't need to devote that many trainings to it. Like, if you train, you know, once or twice a semester, depending on how often you train in a JCC format, you know, it helps people be strong in normal crisis, and it helps people get the feel of what the JCC format is like, and it also keeps in mind that typically most delegates on your team aren't going to be in JCCs. But I feel like I'm seeing them more and more.
I feel like every conference has at least one.
Yeah.
Often two.
And that means up to 4 committee rooms are going to be in JCC style.
Yeah. I just feel like it also, like Casey said, even if you're not in a JCC, it kind of forces some creativity out of delegates, which is a really great practice regardless of what type of committee you're in, because it kind of shakes things up. We're a team that trains primarily on simulation very regularly, so if you need something new to kind of challenge your delegates because things are getting stale, a JCC is a really great way to do that. It challenges people, which is nice.
Yeah.
Do y'all have any tips as like being a delegate in a JCC and like what you would recommend?
Yeah. Number one tip that gets kind of annoying sometimes is don't switch sides just because you can. Like, if your position doesn't already have the propensity to, like, switch sides, or, like, it would be in your character's, like, canon or ability to do that, then don't do that.
And that doesn't mean you can't communicate with the other side and, you know, like, be kind of shifty, but it's, you know, the whole idea of, like, outwardly condemning your committee and getting up and moving into the other room, which, you know, works sometimes for people to get awards. And I respect that game because everyone's trying to be different and whatever, but, you know, maybe.
But, like, if you're an extremely conservative Republican in the Republican National Convention Committee and you're going against the Democrats and you get up and you go to the Democrat side, like, that makes no sense. Don't do it just to be like, ha ha ha, like, I'm switching sides. Because then you're just going to flounder in the other room and no one's going to listen to you. Because none of them agree with what you're trying to say.
Facts.
I think my biggest tip is, starting off, obviously, like, be a strong delegate, use all the tips from a regular committee, but I've always had success in JCCs from really being the leader in the room against the other side.
That's what exactly what I was going to say.
Like, I like JCCs because I do well in them. Like, honestly, like, that's why I go back and back to them, is because I award in them and I feel strong in the position that I can play in that room. Because I go in and I know, hey, and of course, I always look for positions that would play well to this strategy, but go into the room, be the one who unites the people against the other side. Because then you're hitting that tally as, like, a leader in the room. You're hitting that tally as, you know, kind of joining people together to write directives against, and you're really going with the background and the direction of the committee, because Crisis likes it and the chair likes it when they see someone who's really playing into the hand that they were shown, like, hey, you're against this person, and so they're like, okay, yeah, I'm super against that person. Everyone, we're all against that person. Let's go. Let's rally the troops kind of thing.
No, I 100% agree. And kind of building off that point, I would really urge people to try and avoid infighting. That's the way to lose. It's the number one ticket to, you know, just having a really unsuccessful JCC committee, because as much as you could have the most incredible crisis staff in the world, the most incredible chairs, and if the delegates don't cooperate, it's going to fail. So if you're a delegate in a JCC, work with crisis. Go with a background guide. You know, work with your committee. Even if you're annoyed and everyone doesn't agree on every single topic, that's how to lose. Who is that person that submitted the story talking about the Mars versus Earth JCC?
Oh, Griffin, right?
Yeah, and Mars got one of them got absolutely demolished because they couldn't even, like, focus on fighting the other one.
Yeah.
It's stuff like that. It's, you know, it gets annoying. And if you want to, A, enjoy a JCC, and B, be successful in a JCC, just cooperate as much as you can. Because, you know, it's going to make everybody else have a better time.
Yeah, and even as a chair, if you see a bunch of infighting going on and you realize that, you know, they haven't passed a directive in, like, probably half an hour and nothing's going on and they're just, like, bickering with each other, you know, maybe shut that down and be like, hey guys, we're literally going to get trampled by, I don't know, friggin' buffaloes in, like, 20 minutes if you don't, I don't know what this side
Buffaloes versus humans. JCC.
Genius.
Buffaloes
Frankly,
versus
love it.
humans. But, like, just shut it down.
I
or
look
try to get them back
strongly
on track.
upon cooperation.
Yes.
Because if you're a delegate who's, like, smart and attentive to what your chair says, they will give tips on how to award. And, like, anytime they suggest something, do it.
Little
Listen to your
do it.
chair.
But I was gonna say, Kyla, my favorite stock phrase that goes with the whole, like, cooperate, be the uniting force is, I know we don't agree on these points, but let's focus on this one thing first, and then we can go back to discussing. Like, because not everything in a JCC is going to be about the other side. Sometimes you need to fix your economy. You need to decide what to do with a crisis, only in your room. And you disagree about that, and then someone pops in and says, hey, you need to do this time crisis, or you need to make battle plans. You need to put your differences aside and do that so you can succeed. But also beware. Every single JCC I've been in, someone's, and this goes along with, like, switching rooms, someone's, like, leaking information.
Oh,
you cannot ever trust
Every
that
time.
what you say in committee is going to succeed. So, if you want to work around that, do it in crisis. Do it with this is also, like, be careful who you trust in JCCs, but do it with a trusted group. Try to figure out, it's hard to figure out who to, we'll do an episode on allies.
Yeah.
Cooperation doesn't mean exposing yourself.
Exactly.
No.
Like, to get the committee to trust you, you don't need to put all of your stuff out there because immediately that's going to go over to the other room.
Literally anything you say in that room could be going over to the other room at some point. It's like one of those Twitter things where someone will say something and then they'll go back and, like, do, like, an advanced search on Twitter for things they had said in the past, and they're like, haha, gotcha, you said you didn't like apples and now you're advocating for apples. Like, what? I don't know. It's a real
reducing race issues to fruit.
I mean, I didn't want to get...
No.
I didn't want to go into it, but now that you brought it up...
But also, general tip for every single committee ever, burn your notes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Send that and say, hey, burn my notes, because if someone in your committee is not seizing them, someone in the other committee is.
Even I feel like write on every freaking note, just because Christ will be like, haha, you didn't say it, and you're like, no, I've written this on every note.
Big tip is a way that in, like, JCCs I've been in has, like, prevented the kind of leakage of information is every time we would start battle plans, or if we were discussing sensitive information, we were discussing battle plans before we wrote them and it wasn't timed, we would make a directive to stop crisis notes and pass it. Because typically, if your committee is pretty united and you can tell a few people are just, like, trickling out information, everyone else is going to be on board with stopping that. And even if the other people don't vote for it, it'll still pass. And
that's actually really smart. That's a really good idea.
So take that one to the bank. That's my big tip.
I never thought about that.
No, yeah, that's a really good idea. And, kind of to finish up this whole tips and tricks session, a little bit about running a JCC. If you find yourself on a JCC staff, particularly a crisis staff, be flexible. Things aren't always going to go the way that you want. The side that you think is going to win isn't always going to win. Don't stick to the narrative so aggressively to where, things can't happen, because rooms behave differently. Also, have crisis directors that are willing to participate in writing notes. Because if you just have people that are orchestrating the show, you will lose a handle on the quantity of notes that you're going to be receiving, because it will be approximately double of what it normally would be.
Especially if you're at the collegiate level, or you have very, very experienced high school delegates, but especially at the collegiate. And I think our JCCs at our high school conference were very successful when we had two directors who were really passionate about the subject, but also good at working together. Really had very similar styles. They knew what each other wanted to do, and that's how they kind of flowed with it.
Yeah.
And they also had the same kind of, like, way they operated and kept track of notes. I mean, and I know that you'll probably be in the same room. Like, your two crisis staff are going to be in the same room, which is how we do ours. It just makes communication easier. But even if you can have, like, a Google Doc where you each put in, big things the other side is doing, so you can kind of stay updated without, yelling at each other about notes all the time.
Yeah, Google Docs, I think, are the key to a good JCC, because it allows everybody to look at the same document. Everyone can see what's going on. It makes things a whole lot easier. And also, from a secretariat side, I have found, and, Casey and Carol might have differing opinions, but I feel like if you find the right staff, the best thing to do is just be hands-off.
Yeah.
Honestly, they really run themselves, and if you get good staffers in there, the less you can intervene and just let the room play out the way that the room is going to play out, the better it's going to be. Because the more you intervene as crisis and try and force events to happen, it's going to seem inauthentic and it's going to get annoying. So just, let the delegates do what they're going to do.
As long as you have creative crisis staff that's good at replying to notes and, like, keeping people interested, and also creative delegates, like, that's a big thing.
Yeah. It heavily depends on
Yeah.
them as well.
But I mean, even if only one side is creative and at least someone's having fun writing notes, they're not going to get bored. They're not going to be like, oh, they're sending troops here, and then forget that a note completely happened.
Yeah, if it side's winning, let them win, Like, if another side isn't being comparatively, aggressive, fine, that's their own choice. I feel like things get annoying when sides moves are blocked for the sake of quote-unquote fairness, when it's really not fair because one room is working harder than the other.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what this year brings me, and the fact that after the kayak one this year, even though I enjoyed it, I was like, I can't do JCCs anymore. They're just too exhausting. It's too much juggling with, like, both the rooms and all the moving parts. Can't wait to see how many JCCs I do this year.
Maybe it's going to be all JCCs.
I'm going to say, like, 2 or 3 at least.
Maybe you'll do one
Tweet
of our...
us. No. Comment on our Instagram if you see Casey in a JCC this year.
I spotted her. She was lying the whole time.
Maybe you'll be in one of our dreaded Cold War JCCs that we complain about all the time.
Yeah. Honestly, let us know if you've been in any spicy JCCs, just for, like, our own entertainment purposes. If you've been in any cool ones, DM us, because I kind of just said porpoises.
That's fine.
Casey just mouthed it
I'm
to
sorry,
me.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you were like,
No,
porpoises.
it's totally fine. I wish that this was a podcast about marine science, honestly. I took marine science my senior year of high school, and I really loved it. It was my favorite ever. It was really, really fun. I finessed doing that because I didn't want to take physics. Still have never taken physics. I don't understand how energy works.
It's fine.
How is this microphone running right now?
I literally have no idea. Like, I sometimes
Magic.
have, like, mini panic attacks because I don't understand how a car works.
I mean,
like,
I can tell you,
like, functionally, I don't understand how it goes from gas to it
Combustion.
moving.
There's like
yeah, I know, but like, where does it go to get to the wheels?
it's a bunch of explosions.
I understand how an engine
Your car
works.
is blowing up
But,
constantly.
like, the car, the engine's exploding, but then, like, the power goes, how does it make the wheels? I don't know. I don't get it.
If you're listening to this still, I'll be surprised. But also, slide into our DMs to explain to Kyla how a car works.
Or you can literally just
Send
go
Kyla
look up
a
the
link.
Wikipedia page.
I frankly could learn in probably 5 minutes how
Yeah.
a car works. I refuse. I will never learn how
You
a
wanna
car
learn?
works.
You want to live in the mystery?
No, but I like know a lot about car brands and car types and like stuff like that, but nothing about how they actually work. So,
well,
All right.
ain't that the truth?
Wow.
we'll just rev this V6 engine to a close here, baby.
I'm keeping
Whoa,
that
whoa,
in.
whoa.
Good.
Pump the
It's
brakes on this Fiat, sweetheart.
On this Fiat?
We are a Fiat. A Fiat 500, baby.
No,
Honestly,
no,
those are kind of expensive.
We're an Alfa Romeo. We're better than a Fiat.
Oh, that was... No. We're
Okay,
not.
we're gonna come to a complete stop.
Stop sign. Okay, anyway, I would look favorably upon a motion to close this horrible debate.
Motion to close this horrendous debate.
Yep, that's absolutely in order. All those in favor?
I
All right, debate's closed.
Point of information, what are your social medias?
You can follow us on Instagram at Mono1Podcast, and you can email us any questions or comments that you may have at mono1.business@gmail.com.
And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, be sure to rate and review us.